It's a distinct honor to be able to introduce Rashid Sumaila for today's seminar. I feel like not much of an introduction is needed because we all know Rashid, but do we really? So I looked him up on Wikipedia, and it turns out he was born in Ghana in 1992 and is now a very famous professional football player. And actually, Rashid tells me that's incorrect. He was not born in Ghana, he was born in Nigeria. But the rest of it is probably true. He is also an exceptional bioeconomist, and I will not take any more of your time.
Yeah, born in 1992, that would be nice. I only wish. Okay, so I plan to do about 3 things today. And this talk is a kind of condensed, summarized version of my Volvo Prize seminar in Stockholm on November 29. Okay? So it's going to be, because my goal is to talk for about 25 minutes. And then some of you may have seen the video already. They came here and actually did a video, which about 10 minutes, which I'll show after my talk, and then we'll have a discussion. All right, so those of you who have seen it again, you can walk out and come back for the questions. Hopefully you will do that. All right, so this figure, you're seeing it now, and you will see it again at the end of the show. So essentially, I think 2 of our big problems globally as people is the ability to deal with nature in a sustainable manner, and also the ability to share the benefits of the world to the world citizens. So you have a lot of inequality, and you have depletion of resources and pollution, plastic, climate change, and so on. And the point I'm going to make here is that there are 3 issues I'm going to focus this talk around, and it relates to the work we do here. Subsidies is a policy issue. Our governments decide to give taxpayer money to different sectors for different reasons, sometimes good reasons, sometimes not so good. Sometimes good reasons for something, like for social reasons, but then it may have negative effect on the environment. So the way we deal with this policy tool can either affect sustainability negatively and or affect the distribution of benefits, and I'll try to make the argument here. The same thing goes with climate change, right? It's our pollution, the greenhouse gases. How is it done? What are the consequences on conservation and on people? And then the high seas has become quite topical now these days, mainly because more boats are going out to fish there, and there are consequences. And how we fish there or not fish there can also have effect on conservation and on people. So this is what the whole talk will be about as we move forward. So fairness, what is fairness? So I did a bit of reading to just prepare a few points. Almost all of you have heard somebody say, it is not fair, right? You have to go to primary school and see kids playing, and you're always talking about not fair. But what is that? We judge fairness in relative terms in general, usually in comparison with your peers, right? So I'm a student, how do we do? And so on and so forth. And true fairness really would be in a situation where everyone has the same, or there is an equitable system of balance, such that those who work hard or contribute more get more. So you have to find a way for people to feel this is fair. I know why he or she is getting that and not getting that. Then that's another way of looking. And then when you go into the religions, you see the golden rule, right? I'm quoting from the Bible. But I think this happens all around in all religions. You find elements of this. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if you operate that way, then in general you are almost automatically behaving in a fair way, because really you want you to be treated fair. So these are a few things I picked up in the literature. Now, we all know that inequity is one of the world's big problems. It is huge, as some politicians would say. It's a big issue. Now, I don't know how many of you have know the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule is this idea which was developed by some scientists or economists years ago, hundreds of years. But this person did experiments in different sectors, industries, institutions, and what he found is that in any situation you go, 20% of the people will do 80% of the work. It's almost a natural rule, 80-20. Yeah, so have a collection of people, 20% will do 80%. If you have investment, 20% of your stocks will give you 80% of the returns. So if we're dealing purely on the market, the distribution of income should be 80-20, right? If we're fair. But I tell you, our world today is worse than that. So we set up governments to help us balance this, because the whole principle is you give the job to the one who can do it best. But then we have tools to try to redistribute. That's what taxation is about. These days you cannot tax anyone, right? The billionaires want to take all the money and run away with it. So if I looked at data, 3 of the richest people in the world own more than 10% of the world's poorest population. So that's the kind of thing. So our governments are useless, actually. They aggravate the distribution of problems, right? That's what it means. The market alone would be better, which is quite sad to see in the data. And one of the most enduring, somebody says this is one of the biggest problems humanity has been facing through time. Revolutions come to try to reset this, and we get back in there. So it's very tough to deal with this. And inequality has consequences. It's not like, oh, I don't care, they're poor, and that doesn't bother me. Actually, it can catch up with you, really. You have to ask Europeans about the forced migration or illegal migration from West Africa, for example, right? The fish is gone, I have nothing to eat, you think I'm going to sit and die? No, it's the people. And so it can affect everybody. So it's everybody's problem to think about this. Now, access to resources has implications, social welfare and governance, how you are able to govern your people. Ultimately, if you don't do it properly, to catch up with you. And it affects economic development too. I know many of my economics friends will tell you, make the cake first and then share it later, right? But a number of us are saying the way you make the cake can have implication on how you share it too, especially if you cannot tax the cake maker, right, in order to put into education and so on. So health and human safety. So this is not things we do just because we're. Now the big question is, how does this come into my 3 key themes? So let's take subsidies. You all know this, the tax money going to the sector, and like I said, economists don't say all subsidies are bad. This thing comes from what we call externalities, which is the situation where what I do for my own benefit affects you, Chris, that I don't take that into account. So you get a negative, and it can be negative or positive. So if I drive my car and come here and I pump CO2, you are affected, but I just want to come and teach, right? So that's a negative externality. But they can be positive. You have a beautiful flower bed, somebody passes by, he or she enjoys it, you don't charge them, that's a good thing. Usually people don't complain when you give them positive externality. When it's negative, somebody is going to knock on your door. And so subsidies can be used depending on how society values things. This is our basic model, the Gordon Schiffer economic model. It's really criticized a lot, but it keeps standing. I call this beautiful science. You can go after this model as long as you want, you end up using it. That is what makes it beautiful science. What do you have else to explain this phenomenon? So you see very quickly, everybody here, I guess, knows this. So essentially, if you have the first part of this, there's no subsidy. So you have your fishing costs going up. Your revenue is that kind, which also depends on the biology, or actually depends mostly on the biology and the price. Then you have all sorts of equilibria. The economists will like the MEY, maximum economic yield. Biologists or some biologists will argue, or food security people will argue for maximum sustainable yield, it gives you more food. And then some social scientists actually argue for open access because you employ more people that can take the fish down, right? So if you have that, those will be the equilibrium. You have subsidies reducing your cost. It's going to swing that linear curve down, and that will mean everything being equal, there's going to be more effort, which means the fish, everything being equal, is going to be more in trouble. That's why essentially we don't like subsidies much. It affects the sustainability of the resource. So in the mid-2000s, we started doing this. Actually, it started with Ahmed Khan. I don't know how many of you remember. This is my master's student. He's from Sierra Leone. He came to me and he wanted to study subsidies in Sierra Leone, fisheries subsidies. We started the conversation, and we're then doing the CRR's work and linking with all the work Daniel and all of us are doing. I say, you know what? Sierra Leone is interesting, but actually, if you want to do something that people will notice, we go global. So that's how we moved from Sierra Leone to the world, and I said, and Sierra Leone will be in it, so so we started, and that has really gone a long ways. So we have a number of questions we address, but to do that, you need a database. So we set out to really create what we call a living database for all the 144 maritime countries in the world. We develop a mechanism, data searches, and then estimation procedures, and we're always improving this. In fact, I'm starting the next round of improvement. This has been so useful in the WTO negotiations. The World Bank is used a lot, and it's nice to see. In fact, at some point, I wrote to every fisheries minister in the world and every ambassador to the World Trade Organization of all countries, maritime countries, to kind of solicit data, and sometimes I threaten them actually. I say, look, we know you give this subsidy, we don't have data, you're hiding it, we estimate it, and you may not like our estimate. So if you really want to give us your numbers, and sometimes we actually get numbers. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So one of the things we did is to classify the subsidies. Like I said, they are all not bad. So we talk about beneficial subsidies, subsidies that help you to manage your fishery sustainably. So all the research and management and monitoring and control we consider to be good because, yeah. And then the bad ones are those that help you to overfish. Fuel subsidies is a big one. If somebody pays part of a fuel subsidy, you're going to fish more than if they don't. And there are some that are not clear to classify. So we go in and then we do analysis. Now, we were building these things, and I take enough time. And so we do this at the national level for each country. And I went into an argument with the Speaker of the House of Assembly from Indonesia. I gave a presentation and he went after me and said, we will continue to give subsidies. I said, why? I said, he said, we want to help our poor and small-scale fishers. And since then, I wanted to look deep into the data to find out whether the money really goes to small scale. I know they don't, but I didn't have evidence. So Anna came on board, and that is one of the biggest contributions, Anna Shoba, and we developed a system and tried to do this. The paper is published, you can find the details, but this is my main exhibit from the subsidies work. If you look at the column there, you have the total subsidy estimated for 2009 as $35 billion a year. This is about 30 to 40% of the gross revenues of the sector. Think about that. If you're doing a business and somebody's paying you 30% of your gross income, man, that's what is happening here. Now, that's the global number, but then if you split into small scale, large scale, only 16% of the total 35 billion actually goes to fisheries that are classified as small. 84% goes to. If I had these numbers then, when I had that argument, this was in the British House of Lords G20 meeting, I would have told him, sir, you're not helping the poor, you're helping your friends. But I didn't have the data. So that's it. Then you look into the pie chart. An additional point is that the subsidy that goes to small scale are generally less harmful. Only about 40% are classified as capacity enhancing. But on the other hand, the large scale, the big diesel fuel consumers get about 60% of their total subsidy is what we don't want to be. So there is that dimension. So this tells you what happens with the subsidies where disadvantages small scale poor nations, increasing inequality, and this is one of the ways we can actually get inequality down. Go to the root cause, don't give them subsidies, and especially don't let all the subsidies go to the big people. So that is point number one. Climate change and fairness. We know this. Warming ocean water, sometimes cooling. It turns out that if it cools too much, the fish die too. You heard some news this year. The golden, actually, fish die no matter how far, where you go, right? If it's extreme, right? So but there's warming, there's acidification, all these are happening. When the scientists say this as an economist, I see danger. I see dollars in danger, right? Because it translates easily into money. So this is a representation of what happens. If the biophysics is changing, it's going to affect the biology at different levels, and that will translate into impacts on people, into societies, food security, and so on. So that is, so we go about and do some modeling work. I'm not going to give you the details here in the paper, but essentially, you have to have the biology and build on it the economics, and then fortunately, we have William and his group and other people doing this work here. So coupling those two together, we're able to do some neat stuff. And, I'll just show you again, just one, that's the economic part here. So this is a key result from Vicky's PhD work, and what we did here was to look at the revenue impacts globally. And this is an iconic figure in many ways. It tells you the revenues will be lost in the middle of the world. That is close to the equator, so you see that. And to me, this picture is quite a powerful one. And it talks to economics, it talks to ecology, but it also talks about equity and our moral obligations, because these people in the middle or close to the equator actually don't pump out so much CO2 per capita, right? Most of it is in the north. We are doing it. They get hit, they lose the fish, and they also depend on fish more. So this is something for all of us to really think about aggravating. So we try to look at the food implications of this, and you see the parts of the world that will suffer most in the middle again. So that's where we have most malnutrition. That is where the impacts are going to be. This is just the ocean. I tell you, it's happening in the fresh waters. Peter will tell you in agriculture it's happening. So lots of things to think about. This is another beautiful picture. You see the countries in this quadrant, all the small countries that pump less, depend on fish more, and will be hit more. Whilst countries like Iceland will be laughing to the bank, right? No, Norwegians tell me we want, some of them, of course, not all. In fact, the nation is working against climate change. But some of my friends say, hey, climate change is good for us, right? So that's the second point in terms of inequality and climate change. Large-scale protection, very quickly. This is our world ocean. The ocean is like this. We put the barriers. The light blue areas are the country waters, 200 nautical miles, and the deep blue are the high seas. So we put the mark and divide this. But you know what? The fish don't know this, right? Fish go where they go. I gave a talk in Washington just after Mr. Trump took over. And I said, you know what? Mexican fish, they don't need visa. They come when they come. American fish too, right? And Canadian fish. So in managing the ocean, you have to think globally. I mean, so because what you do in the high seas can impact and vice versa. So this is a lot of thinking here. Research is going on. The UN is actually now working on how to better manage areas beyond national jurisdiction, as they call it. That means the lawyers are big in that, so they call it that way, right? So one of the things we quickly realized analyzing the data is very little of the fish we catch actually spend all their time in the high seas. Most of them struggle. And then a lot stay only in the ocean. So that's what these pie charts are telling you. For example, if you look at catch and revenues, less than 1% of the fish we catch spend all their time in the high seas. So when I saw this data, what quickly came to mind is, hey, if we shut the high seas for fishing, we're not going to lose much, because most of them will go in and out, and when they come in, we can catch them. So this is the beginning. Meanwhile, we can save on costs because you don't have to go in. Remember, the high seas is 2/3 of the ocean, and we catch less than 10% of the total catch from there. So economically, you can see red lights. You have to go in, search, go far, bend carbon. This is what led me into this thinking of what to do with the high seas, and started calling for closing the high seas from fishing. Super crazy. So these are a few papers. These papers from Luis Costello and his postdoc, Kowai, and ours here. Around the same time, we actually published some economic analysis showing that it may be wise for the world to close the high seas to fishing. You turn the high seas into a fish bound where the fish can hide, grow, seed the rest of the ocean. Poor countries can catch some of it instead of the 10 big ones, and you have the economics because you don't incur so much cost. So the whole idea is you close the high seas, what happens? Slowly, the number of fish in the ocean increase because they get peace when they are there until they come out. And then you're sitting at home and the fish just come. Really? Into your boat. No cost. So why would this not be nice to have, right? So that is the main philosophy behind this. And we went into the calculations. I won't give you a lot of this. Is the last thing I say here. We calculated what we call the Gini coefficient in economics. It's a coefficient that tries to, if you take a country, you calculate the percentage of national income that goes to a percentage of the population. So how much of the 10% of the income goes to 10%, 50% goes to 50%, that would be beautiful, right? That's unequal. But sometimes 10% goes to 1% and so on. So the Gini coefficient is calculated for each country of the world. You have the UN, the World Bank, we have these numbers. So it tells you how wide the distribution of benefits or how close it is. In the world today, from the data I've seen, which country do you think has the best distribution in terms of not too wide distribution? Which is more evenly, which country most evenly divides its income nationally? Can you guess?
Sweden. Norway.
Sweden, eh? Who said Sweden? How did you know? It's correct, actually. It's Sweden. How about the country with the least equality? US. US. Most people say US, and actually it's not the US.
No,
Huh?
it's an African country.
Yeah, an African country. Which one?
South Africa.
South Africa, yes. So South Africa has the most unequal, and you all know why, right? Right? So you know why. So that's it. So when you do the calculation for the high seas income from the high seas, with or without closing the high seas, you turn the income distribution from that of South Africa to that of Sweden. That's what the numbers are saying. So huge distributional consequences because Guinea-Bissau then can catch the fish when it comes in instead of Spain or China or Taiwan catching it. So that's the 10th one. So now I'm back to my picture again. So there is a lot you can do here in order to mitigate the unfairness, and the unfairness also has consequences on sustainability. So there is a feedback back and forth. So for example, if we take out all the bad subsidies, we help sustainability. But at the same time, we'll be helping the distribution because really the big guys get most of the bad subsidies. So, and that will have positive feedback, more fish, people better distributed. And you can do the same with climate change. If we do the Paris Agreement, it's going to help a lot of poor people, which is as well because it will cause a problem. So there you go, and the high seas already talked about that. So what else do I have? I don't have, this is my last slide because I'm rushing to get to a little fun stuff, and then you get questions later. I always like to show this because in Sweden, when I gave my talk, at the end I showed this and I said, no students, no professor. And that was a quote of the evening. Everybody was saying, no student, no professor, right, please? Is that right? Who is going to dispute that here? So this is the group. I never managed to put everybody up on one slide. But yeah, so if you are not there, please don't go after me. All right? Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for your attention. All that I've talked about are published. So now let me get that thing here. This is the ocean. We need to take really good care of this. Deep under here, you don't see it, but there's a lot of life here. Food and marine life. We need the oceans more than the oceans need us.
On the Canadian west coast, here in Vancouver, British Columbia, you can look over the Pacific. It stretches more than 7,500 kilometers to Japan. This is the largest body of water on the planet, and it used to be teeming with fish and marine life. Now that is changing. The world's oceans, covering 70% of the surface of the planet, were once seen as an infinite supply source for humans to use. But the oceans are under strong pressure. Scientific data from Rashid, Sumaila and other researchers show that the global fish catch has stalled and is now falling, despite increased efforts from fishing fleets all over the world.
There is less and less fish to catch.
The research of this year's laureate shows us how imminent and devastating the threats are to fish and marine life. But he also has solutions.
If we make the high seas the fish bank of the world, we'll get these benefits ecologically, economically, and also socially. Beautiful idea.
For years, researchers here have been compiling data and statistics on global fish catch. What they have found is that official statistics don't add up. There is more fish caught than officially reported.
So our group, led by Daniel Pauli, have been spending time trying to re-estimate and get us as close to the true catch as possible. Globally, we're seeing that actually the official data is about 50% up.
The first reaction is, but it doesn't correspond to the official catch. But the official catch doesn't correspond to reality.
The global fish catch in the world from 1950 to 2010 was 3.6 billion metric tons, reported officially. But when the researchers at the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries took into account all fishing, recreational, illegal, local non-reported fishing and more, they came up with a much higher figure, 5.4 billion metric tons. That is 50% higher than the official figures. Stevston was once a bustling fishing village. Nowadays, the fishing boats spend most time in port, since their fishing quotas are quickly filled.
It's very slow here compared to what it used to be historically.
Randy Pilford has been a fisherman all his life, but now his fishing vessel Calvada is mostly moored at the quayside.
It was a really good lifestyle when I was younger.
You think there's still a lot of fish out there?
I'm not sure about that anymore. It's got worse every year.
What would you say to a young man? Would you say go into the fishing industry?
No.
No?
No.
Marine life has taken a devastating hit in the last 40 years. A recent study from the Worldwide Fund for Nature indicates a nearly 50% decline in marine life populations between 1970 and 2012. But overfishing and overexploitation of marine resources aren't the only threats to the oceans. There are several million tons of plastics entering the oceans every year.
If we don't do something to stop this, in the next few decades there might be more plastic in the ocean than fish, which is quite scary. And this plastic, they break into little pieces, microplastic. The fish see them and they think it's algae. They eat them, it pollutes them, and also actually can pollute people.
Related to pollution is climate change, which is responsible for changing the oceans more rapidly than at any other point in recorded history.
we can see that there's a general decline in both of the catch and the revenue along the tropical region. When the temperature is getting warmer, this habitat is not suitable for them anymore.
A slight rise in temperature will change ocean currents and also disrupt the ocean's food chain.
Every animal, like people, we have a comfortable range of temperature. When it's too hot, me and you, we can put on the air condition. Or if it is too cold, we put on the heater. The fish don't have that. They either have to move and follow the temperature, or if they can, they perish.
One of Rashid Sumaila's suggestions has been to ban fishing altogether on the so-called high seas. These are the unregulated areas covering 2/3 of the oceans. The high seas are owned by everyone and no one, which means they're up for grabs and undefended.
We make the high seas the fish bank of the world, where the fish can hide and grow. That will make the biodiversity improve. That will make the economics improve, because instead of going into the high seas and burning carbon and spending a lot of money to catch the fish come in within the EEZ, so it's cheaper to catch.
The idea to ban fishing in the high seas was originally seen as totally unrealistic.
People thought I was crazy, really. But now people are saying, hey, maybe this is a wise thing. For the same reason that you don't open your savings account to all kinds of expenditures. And the more you think about it, the more you like it.
There is now a growing support for protection of the high seas. And the first high seas marine protected area, the Ross Sea in Antarctica, has recently come into force. New technology, which makes it possible to track down fish virtually everywhere, can also be a main tool for monitoring and help in creating sustainable fisheries.
This is amazing stuff. Every fishing boat that has a tracker in the world, you can actually look for individual vessels here. This is going to be the future of surveillance, at least in the high seas. This exists now.
Just a few words, okay?
Another of Rashid Sumaila's research areas is subsidies to fishing fleets.
Many governments around the world give subsidies to the fisheries sector with good intentions. But a lot of these subsidies actually lead to overfishing. So one of the things you want to do, don't give subsidies that leads to overcapacity and overfishing. In many parts of the world, there's a lot of illegal fishing going on. You need to have a system that changes the economic equation such that it doesn't pay to fish illegally.
For more than 20 years now, Rashid Sumaila has worked relentlessly with research on the future of the oceans. Perhaps an unexpected career for a boy growing up in a tailor family in the Nigerian countryside.
Everything started with my daddy, who was quite progressive. He said, you know what? Go do whatever you really have passion for and do it very well. Even if it is cleaning gutter. Once you do it well, they will look for you. So that thing was really powerful to me. It kind of liberated me. So for graduate school, I decided I would do economics because I was free to do anything.
His studies took him to Norway, where the fishing industry has always been important in the economy, and led to a doctorate in fisheries economics.
So that was how I got into fisheries, and since then I've done fisheries all through. The oceans are amazing. That is where most of life is, balancing the climate and giving us lots of food. But at the same time, it is facing a lot of threats to something that is so valuable to people, and that is really keeping me busy, keeping me passionate. How can we get solutions to keep this amazing natural system that we have going sustainably, not only for us, but also for future generations?
Rashid is one of the stars. He can actually pass very complicated issues in very simple terms to the public, and that completely captivates me. You should see him giving lectures.
He is an incredible orator.
You can see that the passion drives him.
He's camera friendly and he collaborates really effectively with people. People want to work with him.
It changed my life, to have such a positive person in your corner all the time.
We are incredibly proud of him as one of our most eminent scientists.
We can do it. We can sustain the ocean.
The threats to the oceans eventually comes down to our relation to them. The oceans are our lives. This is where life on the planet began. Most people love to be close to water and to the oceans. And we now need to understand how intertwined we as humans are to all marine life.